It's not magic. It's math. It's insurance.
3, 2, 1.
All right, hey, I'm Drew, and I'm here with Chris. Welcome to the Ready, Set, Grow podcast. Today, we wanted to introduce and really start the discussion around our 10 for 100 sales idea for advisors. And Chris, this is something that you and I have been working on. Really, something we've been talking about for a long time, but the actual concept is something that you came up with a few weeks back. So take a few minutes, just tell me a little bit, or tell us a little bit about the 10 for 100 idea and why it's important for advisors in terms of growing their practice.
Yeah, great question. So, yeah, I mean, you and I have been doing long-term care planning for 10 plus years each, right? So, one of the things that I realized and got me thinking about long-term care planning in a different way and why we need to lead with something like this to help advisors grow is it just came down to when I was talking to advisors, 9 times out of 10, they'd call me when they're asking for a long-term care quote. It's because a client asked for one, So we know the need and the interest is out there because it's not like a lot of other products where you have to go out and proactively sell it. What we're seeing is clients finding out about it on their own and saying to their advisor, I want this. Why aren't you talking about it with me? And so it got me thinking about, obviously it's a huge issue. Baby boomers lost trillions of dollars, leaving the workplace early, whether that's lost Social Security benefits, lost 401k contribution matches, lost pension benefits, lost 401k savings. There's so much cost that boomers incurred because their parents got sick, right? So they know they have a very close emotional reaction to long-term care and long-term care planning because they saw mom and dad in that place.
That's right.
Or they might be currently taking care of mom and dad. And we know that advisors could, frankly, just do a better job talking about it, right? And so we wanted to make it easy, right? So the 10 for 100 concept is really simply put, finding lazy assets and putting them to work. Purchasing an asset-based long-term care policy that's going to guarantee clients protection, tax-free, for long-term care if they ever need it. And so this really came around, the reason we called it 10 for 100 is, hey, let's take 10% of your client's assets and fund a long-term care vehicle to form a wrapper around the remaining assets to cover 100% of the long-term care need, right? I think it's important because our clients right now stand a 70% chance of needing care. And so anyone over 65, 7 out of 10 of those folks are going to have some sort of care need, right? And I think it's important for advisors because, we talked about this, the safeguarding future revenue. You know what I mean?
That's right.
If I'm managing a client's assets and they have to take $250,000 off my books, that's money that's coming off my plate. And instead of having them spend that down dollar for dollar from an account I'm managing or an annuity that I want to roll to something better when interest rates get better, I can take $1 and turn it into $3 if I use a long-term care policy.
Fully guaranteed.
Fully guaranteed. And so I think that's why it's important is it's such a laydown. It's a laydown sale. At the end of the day, clients are talking about it. Clients want it. And advisors just got to start talking about it. You were talking about like 6 figures in revenue. I think we can
easily.
Anybody that's doing over $5 million in annuity can generate 6 figures in revenue just on the long-term care side.
Absolutely.
And so that's where it really came about, man, and why we think it's important, right?
Yeah. And I think what we've always found is that, advisors do a really great job of accumulating assets and managing those, creating income plans, but there has been this gap in the protection piece.
Yeah.
And I think most advisors assume that we just want to help push life insurance.
Yeah.
And they forget about this long-term care component, which you've already shared the stat, showing how important it is as part of someone's actual overall plan. But again, I think the biggest struggle has been, how do we bring it up in conversation? What's
Yeah.
a great way for us to do that? And how do we pay for it? Because I think advisors will assume that this is going to be an added cost to their client's retirement portfolio, and maybe they don't want to address it because they don't want to add expenses
Yeah.
when things are already tough. So as we kind of explore the 10 for 100 more, where, I guess the better question would be is how are we uncovering the dollars? Or can you go a little bit deeper into where we're pulling this money from, as opposed to the normal checking account and making it a normal monthly expense? How are we pulling this money out to perform this protection for them?
Yeah. So I mean, just a little background. I mean, you and I did this for years, like talking about long-term care. And I think the mistake we always made was solving for what the client will need rather than helping the client find the money to pay for whatever they can.
Right.
Right. And that's a totally different conversation for an advisor, right? I mean, we're really deep in the discovery side on that side, of the business, helping advisors find the funds to cover a long-term care need and making it easy for a client to say yes, right? Because we don't want to have, that age-old conversation about, oh, take $100,000 in a single premium and put it into this product. It's a great deal, right? It's a great deal if you do it that way. But at the end of the day, clients just weren't biting on that.
Right.
The bait wasn't catching.
Yeah, it seems like a big number.
It's a huge number. And I think for a lot of folks, what is making a more impactful a more impactful style of planning is, I'll give you an example. Like, there's actually one of the advisors you work with in Florida. We were talking about a case, right?
You were talking to my guy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You're out of the office.
Okay.
I mean, it's like, no offense.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I mean, they had to call me.
enough.
They were forced to.
Yeah, have to be. Yeah.
But so like this guy came over and was like, hey, got 62-year-old married couple, right? 1.6 million, 1.3 of it's in annuities and assets under management. They have their retirement needs met, right? But they still have another account on the sidelines, about $300,000 in a money market, not with the advisor. They're not currently managing it. And so it's a great opportunity to capture those assets, right? By leading with a long-term care conversation. But the way we did it was this. I mean, we've identified an undeployed asset, right? Any asset, whether it's not qualified or IRA, pre-tax, post-tax, doesn't matter, really. As long as they're not drawing it down actively for retirement income, we can make something happen with that, right? And with these clients in particular, turns out that money market was earning about 5%, right? $300,000, 5%, that's $15,000 a year.
Yep.
We took $9,000 of that, not even all their interest. And we took $9,000, funded a policy for 10 years. I think that's one of the things advisors don't realize about these long-term care plans now. You can fund for more than a year.
That's right.
You can fund for 5, 10, 20. Some you can even pay all the way out to age 95 or 100, just depending on the age of the client. And this particular client, they wanted to do a 10-year paying most of them. I think, wouldn't you say most of them were getting our 10 pays?
Are fitting in that mold.
Yeah.
That's what I've seen.
65, 55, 75, paying in for 10 years, skimming interest off the top, not even all the interest off the top of an undeployed asset they're not even using for retirement income. It's a laydown.
That's the key.
Yeah. I mean, you make it easy for a client to say yes by finding the funds already and preempting those objections, right? There's no reason why you wouldn't do this if I can show you a way to not even touch your principal in this undeployed money market account, Mr. and Mrs. Client.
It's still growing.
It's still growing. We're only taking a portion of the interest every year, and we're going to form a wrapper around your other assets for long-term care. By the time they were in their 80s, they had $500,000 in guaranteed long-term care they could share.
So 90 to $500,000.
Yeah, guaranteed.
Fully guaranteed.
Fully guaranteed.
Yeah, and that's why this, I think, is so powerful is that story, not it being guaranteed, but being able to use assets that you already have in place, not even really spending them down, still allowing them to grow.
Yeah.
Funding a policy that provides protection at the time at which they're going to need it most.
Yeah.
And we've heard horror stories. I know I've shared one personally at Life Builder of someone spending down, at this point over $1 million of their own money.
It's crazy.
And in a situation where you have a surviving spouse, like what does that do for them financially if you don't have a plan in place? And I think that's why 10-400 is going to be important. I think
Yeah.
it's going to resonate really well with advisors. From a marketing standpoint, what are we doing, or what's in the works that's going to allow us to push this idea more and allow advisors to really take advantage of the concept in general and get hands in the air, and instead of waiting for someone to ask, having hands in the air ready to do business with them immediately?
These are great questions. Do you have it on like a Post-it note or anything?
No, I studied really hard last night on this.
Stayed in a Holiday Inn Express.
Oh man,
last night.
this is like my Oprah moment, man.
Yeah. I know you're really thriving.
Yes.
Okay. So
yes.
all right. So I mean, with a great question. So we're basically building a marketing program in a box for advisors. That's going to include. I mean, it includes stuff like seminar presentation slides that help you seamlessly integrate the long-term care conversation into your seminar you're already doing. Right? Find educational workshop, what have you. Just fit that concept in. The fact of the matter is, a lot of the guys are already talking about it. They're just not planning the way we're planning.
That's right.
And so a lot of guys are probably listening to that and say, well, I'm put them into an annuity with a long-term care rider. Great, but I would challenge you to look at the leverage point on a long-term care policy on the life insurance side. Because assuming your client's healthy enough, there is no comparison with the leverage you can purchase. It's not magic. It's math. It's insurance. It's just better.
Right. Well, the annuity's there to be your personal pension.
Yeah, exactly.
So to speak. It's not your long-term care plan.
Right.
This is how we protect the annuity.
Yeah, and so we're coming alongside an advisor and saying, hey, we have seminar add-ons you can put in. We have talk tracks. We have a video that's going to showcase how to present it to a client, right? We have call scripts for admin people, right? If you want to have an administrative assistant or maybe a younger downline advisor, cut their teeth, earn some extra revenue. They got an extra hour or two in a day. Pick up the phone, start dialing some folks, right? Social media posts. We're going to have radio scripts. There's going to be a ton of collateral, and there's also going to be some point of sale stuff that can help get them across the finish line once we present the concept in these different marketing avenues. I think the best way to describe what we're building and what we built already is full court press. You can basically integrate this type of planning into every aspect of your marketing. And all it takes is an advisor just being willing to add it. And I think with how easy these cases are, how easy the sales concept is, and how important it is for a client's overall portfolio, it's just a no-brainer for an advisor.
Yeah, that, and this is something you spoke to, I think a couple of weeks back, where you actually had an advisor that said, I'm really looking at this type of planning because of a potential liability issue.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Can you touch on that for a minute? Like what do you mean by, what did he mean by a liability issue, and why is this important?
This was a new one for me. I mean, it was a guy we hadn't worked with in a while. He's doing like 100. He was a fee only now though, so I mean, he's doing like managing like $100 million in assets. Nothing to shake a stick at, right? And basically, he called me out of the blue, said, "Hey, I know it's been a minute since we talked. I'm fee only now, etc. But I'm worried that." And this is something I hear time and time again, long-term care is an underserved part of my business. That's something that advisors talk about all the time, right? That's a main feedback that I get when I start talking to advisors about it, right? And this advisor had the same thing. He's like, I know I'm not talking about it enough. I'm going to start talking about it with everybody. And the real reason is I don't want beneficiaries coming after me with a hatchet or or even worse, a lawsuit. And saying, hey, why didn't you talk to my mom? Why didn't you talk to my dad about long-term care? Why, what happened to all these assets? Why are they gone? Because the fact of the matter is, on average, folks are spending $250,000 on long-term care.
Annually.
Yeah. So you're talking about a significant expense that can completely, for lack of a better term, bankrupt a retiree.
Right.
And in so doing, bankrupt their beneficiaries. That legacy that they were hoping for mom and dad dried up real quick. Every dime of it's in a hospice facility or something, you know?
Yeah, and I think the relationships with beneficiaries is already pretty tough, right? In our
Yeah.
industry, I think we've seen that the amount of next generation that actually sticks with an advisor is
Less
already
than
low
1%.
enough, right?
Less than 1%.
So, I mean, what a better way to,
Yeah.
build a relationship, with a beneficiary is to be able to say, hey, here's this extra piece of the plan that, is going to be important to preserve assets and save assets, not so much because it's going to be passed on to them,
Yeah.
but because I'm a full financial advisor, I'm a true planner, this component is going to be, I'd say, uber important
Yeah.
to protecting these assets. So, one, surviving spouse doesn't run out of money, right? So you're not moving mom into the basement, right? Because she can't afford to live in the house that she's living in now. Or two, yeah, your savings or your opportunity at legacy is just completely wiped out, and no one wants to have that.
Yeah.
So I think, will it increase it a huge number? Maybe, but I'd rather have the conversation to say we've got a plan versus having the beneficiary come and say, I'm a little ticked off because there was no plan.
Yeah. I
Right?
mean, you're talking about an opportunity to build relationship with beneficiaries in a better and more meaningful way. I mean, we've had clients that are in their 50s buy policies on mom and dad that are in their 70s.
That's right.
Because they knew who was on the hook for it. I mean, if mom and dad go down, I'm on the hook. I'm still working, whatever. I mean, that's what I think is a really important part of this conversation is that beneficiary, making sure they're aware that there is a plan, in case that we are in that 70% of people that do need long-term care. And I mean, will it ensure that we retain more assets upon inheritance? Maybe. But at the very least, to your point, it's important to have the conversation just so that they know there is something in place and that you did talk to them about it. I mean, that guy that called me and said, hey, this is a liability for my practice, I'm going to talk about it with everybody. He's making somebody sign a letter every single time he talks with a client and they don't want to move forward on a long-term care plan. He makes them sign a letter that absolves him of any, and basically says, hey, we talked about this. You didn't want to do it. Sign on the dotted and date it because I don't want your beneficiaries coming to me without being able to wave a white flag with this piece of paper.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, I think the great thing about long-term care planning isn't just the value that you're going to bring to a client or the revenue you're going to generate for your practice. I think it's also a defensive play. I mean, we're in a highly competitive industry. That's why we're in business and why, people come to us and work with us is because we're good at marketing. And the reason we need to be good at marketing is because it's a competitive industry, right? So someone's going to talk to your clients about long-term care. Is it going to be you?
It better be.
Yeah.
So that's why 10-400 I think is so important is we know we need to have the conversations, but now let's introduce the assets that are going to make that process much easier for the advisor. So when it's all said and done, I think this is going to be something, again, we kind of highlighted at the very beginning. If you're doing $5 million or more, you already have a book of business with opportunities.
Absolutely.
And now we're going to be introducing the assets that are going to make that conversation that much easier. And this will be an opportunity for you to preserve assets, drive additional revenue, create additional client value, and ultimately, I think put you in a position to be a better planner, which is what all of our advisors are striving to be. Not just accumulating wealth, distributing the wealth, but protecting it as well.
Absolutely.
So to learn more about how Impact can help you grow your business, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and thank you for listening to the Ready, Set, Grow podcast.